Greetings folks and welcome to Bob Vault Trades. I've got something fun and sort of new that I want to talk about, and I know what you're thinking, Bob, that OMEN 15 you've got in front of you, that's nothing new. That's last generation's chassis. You're right, it is, and it has the i7 10750H 6-core and the 2080 Super Max Q, right? I mean, parts that we have been familiar with now for quite some time. But what I want to showcase here is something a little bit different. You see, this laptop was not sent to me from HP to review, and it was also not sponsored by my wallet. Instead, this is a laptop that came from zTecpc, right? And then it was sent over to Mr. Fox, who is their modder. This machine was running 98 degrees on its CPU, running Cinebench within seconds, just like that. So Mr. Fox got a hold of it, and he does what he does. He'll dismantle the device, and then all the little imperfections that he can find, he will address. And oftentimes it's more than just putting liquid metal on the machine. Now, I'm not too sure if this one particular laptop was flawed, but I do see a reoccurring, high temperature issue among many laptops, and there's no escaping it within this device at times. So Fox tore it down, and he did a lot of things to it, whether that's cut, sand, bend, tape, reapply some liquid metal to the CPU, you name it. There's all sorts of things he can and or will do to this device. And that's kind of what I want to talk about here today. Now the laptop, right, it's an OMEN 15 from last generation. It's pretty basic in the fact that it has the red keyboard. It is packing a 300 Hertz Full HD IPS G-Sync display, which it's pretty awesome. How can it not be? Thunderbolt 3, it's this chassis. You guys have seen me cover this, and many other content creators cover this chassis numerous times. So let me get you inside this device here. We can see what we've got, go over thermal performance, and then we'll conclude. So let's start off with the undervolt. The OMEN Gaming Hub replaced the command center. I made an update video about this within the last week prior to recording this video here, and now we can undervolt 10th generation Intel-based CPUs inside of OMEN laptops. Some are even reporting that they can do this on their 9750H, which is really cool. Updates and time frame on this, who knows, but pretty awesome that this is now a thing. Nice job, HP. So we do have a 80 millivolt undervolt that I set in here myself. I've had very little stability issues with this. There was one time where my software hung up, and it might have just been the game, but I've been testing this for hours and hours and hours. I've actually had this laptop in my hands for probably about 3 weeks now, and I've been gaming on it quite a bit. Now there's also a few other profiles that I had created, a 70 millivolt undervolt, and then the intelligent push button, one click here, found that the 55 millivolt undervolt was what was stable for this particular system. So your mileage may vary. If you want to use the one-click intelligent solution and it works for you and you're happy, great. I just prefer to, tune, test, and test on my end. And I find that the -70 has been flawless and the -80 has been flawless all but just one time. So we will be featuring that for the remaining parts of this video just to showcase, maximum capability from this device. So with that out of the way, let's go to the performance control. We'll click on the default tab, we'll max out the fans, and then we'll showcase some Doom Eternal thermal performance, and then we'll move on over to performance. So right now we're about 45 to 60 minutes into the game. I wanted to make sure we got a nice thermal heat soak on the system, and the GPU is going to run around the mid-60s, the CPU maybe low to mid-70s. 80 watts on the GPU here, 35 watts on the CPU roughly. It will pull a little bit higher this depending on the load, but ultimately this has been sort of a worst case scenario upon my testing within several hours of gaming on this particular device over the last few weeks. Now let's see what happens when we activate the performance control profile. Now fast forward again another 45 to 60 minutes for a proper heat soak, and we have the GPU running at 90 watts, the CPU's pulling around 45 watts, and the temperatures, we're looking at a good 10-degree increase on the GPU and maybe a 10 to 12-degree increase on the CPU. So it's just going to be one of those things like, should you desire a little bit more performance, go for it. Overall, the thermal performance here on the default setting, thanks to Mr. Fox mods, in my opinion, is spectacular. But there just comes a point within any given chassis where all of the tools and modding in the world is just not going to be able to overcome the overall size and thermal efficiency of this particular chassis. And while we're in here, let's talk about Cinebench R20 with the negative 55 millivolt undervolt and negative 80 millivolt undervolt. You can see thermal performance here is much better for the short-term power limits, and you can see temperatures getting around the upper 60s to lower 70s, and then long-term power limits temperatures will settle in at around 60 degrees Celsius. So this seems to be a much larger improvement running this test compared to the way this device originally was from the factory. Okay, so what's the conclusion here? It wasn't necessarily to showcase the thermal performance on this particular device. It wasn't meant to brag or anything like that, okay? This is what zTecpc does, and this is what they are doing. They're going through their inventory, one laptop at a time, addressing the ones that run very hot by sending them to Fox. He dismantles them and does the necessary tweaks that he sees fit in order to get the best capabilities from any particular device. I just happen to be lucky enough to get the X170 sent from Mr. Fox, as well as this HP OMEN. Who knows what they're doing next? Who knows if I'm going to continue to get these laptops to talk about? If so, great. There's no money exchange. There's no affiliate links. When I'm done, this will either get sent back to Fox or zTec. I don't even know. They'll let me know. And then that's it. And I just want to let you guys know that there is companies out there that are doing things like this, but not quite to this degree. I have not seen a company yet that will break down each individual laptop and then modify them separately instead of just in a generic form, such as, well, let's put liquid metal on it and be done with it. These things will be taped, sanded, bent, cut, liquid metal, K5 Pro, whatever needs to happen on a particular device will happen in order for it to get its best foot forward. And I think that's really awesome and really unique. And that also has a bit of a price premium, right? Because there's a lot of time and research involved in doing this. I mean, just shipping laptops back and forth from one person to another is going to cost anywhere between $40 to $60 depending on the location. So that in itself is an expense that zTec has to ultimately eat. So there has to be a premium for this feature. And I think the enthusiasts out there will appreciate that, because many people come to my channel looking for advice as to how to get better thermal efficiency from their laptop. And now we have a company that doesn't just apply certain thermal paste to address that, but they will literally dismantle it and do all the things necessary in order to make it the best that it possibly can. And I think that's pretty awesome as an enthusiast. And hopefully some of you will as well. And I know what some of you are thinking. Well, shouldn't all laptops just come great from the factory? Yeah, absolutely. But there's some duds out there, and the manufacturing tolerances as things start to shrink as the thinness of these laptops get smaller and smaller. We're starting to run into some fitment issues more so now than ever. And it's just nice that we can see companies out there that are willing to address that and offer something very unique with a warranty to the consumer. And that's it, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed this perspective on what's happening here. I think this is really awesome, really cool, pun intended. I'm Bob of All Trades, and I hope to see you in the next video.